Yes, thank you very much. Now let's cast our minds back to last week, Wednesday, the 7th of May. About 29, in fact, not even about, exactly 29 political parties contested the national elections, and only 13 of them garnered enough votes to make it into Parliament, National Assembly to be exact. But joining me now to discuss this further, but perhaps before we do, let me just remind you, you may not remember, I'm just a little distracted by the phone that just rang, but you may not remember this. If you do, then you'll bear with me. ANC got 249 seats in Parliament, the DA 89. The New Kids on the Block, Economic Freedom Fighters, took home 25 seats, and the IFP 10. The other smaller parties will share the spoils of about 27 seats or so. Now, why am I talking about that? Because, of course, today the IEC will be handing over the list of MPs that the various parties have chosen to Chief Justice Mogoeng, who will officiate the whole proceedings when Parliament opens. So let's discuss that a bit further. IEC Chair Pansy Klaguda joins me now. Advocate, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you and to your viewers.
When we spoke last week, I envisaged that at this time, a few days later, that you and your team would be resting, that there'd be nothing left to do. But alas, one more hurdle.
Yeah, no, we have to wrap up the work. You know that we designated seats. We had to do that in terms of the law. And then we had to publish the lists of those who have been elected in the Government Gazette. And we had to do that by Tuesday because the law says we have to do that within 48 hours after the elections. So we are here today to hand over that list to the Chief Justice because, as you're aware, the Chief Justice is the one who will swear in those who have been elected, and he will also preside over the election of the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker in the National Assembly.
The Chief Justice was joking a little bit earlier, saying that he'll be the de facto designated IEC in Parliament because he'll be just overseeing the election process, but that was just a side joke. I wanted to find out from you, though, when it comes to the list, is it possible still to make any changes, or pelile, sainile, sainile?
No, you'd remember that the political parties submitted their lists to us. We gave them time to comply with whatever deficiencies they had in their lists, which they did. And after that, we then certified the lists. That was long before the elections, during the candidate nomination period. After we certified the lists, there was no opportunity to change the lists. And these are the lists that we use to designate the representatives. So what, if for instance, a person or a member who has been designated does not take up his or her seat in Parliament, then a vacancy will occur, which Parliament will then have to fill in the ordinary course.
This is a practical step for the IEC, isn't it? It's not just a ceremonious, because we're seeing media here, a lot of pomp and ceremony, a little bit in comparison to what will happen in opening of Parliament. But this is practical so that Chief Justice Mogoeng can familiarize himself with the names on the list.
Exactly, because it's a long list of 400 representatives, and each one of them has to take an oath of office. But it is interesting to note that the average age of members of Parliament is 50, and the youngest person who has been elected is 22 years old and is in Limpopo, and the oldest member of Parliament is 85 years old.
This is very interesting. So there's still hope for some of us if we have those ambitions.
Yes, a little bit disappointed with the number of women because I think it's 42% overall number of women if you combine both the National Assembly and the provincial legislatures, because the list that we are going to be submitting to the Chief Justice is made up of members of the National Assembly and members of the 9 provincial legislatures.
Talk to us about what happens should an MP that's been nominated by a particular party, for whatever reason, cannot take up their seat. What happens then?
As I've indicated, that it will be up to Parliament to fill in a vacancy. A vacancy will arise, and Parliament will then have to fill in that vacancy. And as we understand it, Parliament will fill in the vacancy from the reserve list of a party that has a vacancy.
So what happens now in terms of the IEC? Do you get to put your feet up for a few days preparing for the municipal elections, have some tea with honey?
Well, you might have seen that the Municipal Demarcation Board published the notice day before yesterday in the government gazette, in the newspaper, about the number of wards and so on. So in July, they hand over those wards to us, and we begin with preparations for 2016 local government elections.
So no rest just yet.
Just a little bit.
Just enough to prepare.
But also to say that there is a by-election happening next week as well.
So that's what you do throughout the year, because many people ask, what do IEC officials do in between elections? So you are quite busy.
Yes, there is a by-election. So as we're preparing and running the national and provincial elections on the sides, we're also preparing for by-elections.
And just in closing, I know in your personal capacity that there is a legal dispute that is going to be underway 6th of June, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Are you preparing for that as well? Please correct me if the date is incorrect.
It's the 2nd June, yes, we are.
All prepared for that?
Yes.
Let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time and just a little bit of rest and respite in preparation, of course, for the by-election that you heard about and also the municipal election. So no rest just yet for IEC officials, or just enough for them to prepare for the next casting of ballots. Let's leave it there for now. And from Constitutional Court, it's thank you very much for joining us. I'm Ayanda Ali Payne. Back to you.